series. I'm delighted to welcome Jon Keating from GM Active. He's Head of Business Operations and Company Secretary at GM Active, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the work that GM Active are doing across Greater Manchester and beyond. So welcome, Jon. I've given a bit of an introduction into your role, but just tell us a little bit, Jon, about yourself and your role at GM Active.
Yeah, so my background, a lot of about 20 years or so in the aquatics industry, working for Stockport Sports Trust within Greater Manchester, and then I worked for the FTA and then the ASA, which became Swim England, for just short of 15 years. So yeah, a lot of aquatic experience, of which I still go into the aquatics world at times, having gone to Parliament last week to look at the all-party swimming group. So it's still something that's still close to my heart, and I'm still involved in it. But I guess I took on this role with GM Active just coming up to 2 years ago now. And you know, I live in and I'm a resident of Greater Manchester, have been since the Commonwealth Games. I came up to watch the Commonwealth Games in the summer and never went home, and that's a genuine story. And it's my home and all the rest of it now. So to actually work for an organisation like GM Active is actually there's an awful lot of power in that and a lot of excitement. So my role within GM Active is just try and be that linchpin that brings everything together, bring the strategy together, turn the strategy into implementation, manage and coordinate all of the different working groups and parties that we've got. Try and herd the cats that is the board, just try and get everything working. See nicely moving forward with common aims and a common purpose, which is our strap line. Essentially, we move as one, and it's trying to get all of Greater Manchester to work together as a conglomerate to make an impact to people's lives through physical activity and moving more, and all of the things that we can offer.
Okay, great. So all of the kind of leisure operators within Greater Manchester, are they all members of GM Active currently?
Yeah, so it's the majority of public sector leisure facilities across Greater Manchester that make up the 12 organisations that is GM Active. The reason that it's 12 when we've got 10 local authority areas is just because we've got 2 of the boroughs that have 2 operators within them. So that's Bolton and Manchester, where they've got 2 independent operators running different facilities. That's why the 10 becomes 12. So it's the majority of public sector leisure facilities. So we've got around 99 facilities within our gift, and a coalition of around 3,500 to 3,600 members of staff that are connected to GM Active. That said, many of them at times don't know that they're connected to GM Active because it's sometimes at more of a board level. But we've done lots of work to try and address that. So.
And I suppose, you know, the biggest thing that GM Active is renowned for, not just obviously locally in Greater Manchester, but much wider and across the UK and probably even further afield, is the prehab for cancer programme that started a number of years ago. Just tell us a little bit about prehab for cancer and its origins, but maybe, you know, even more importantly, tell us about, you know, kind of the learnings from that and where it's going now, you know, over the next couple of years and its ambitions.
Yep, so Prehab for Cancer initially started as a pilot programme with a doctor, Dr. John Moore, that was very passionate about kind of looking at physical activity, exercise, the correct nutrition, mindfulness, etc., to really try and tackle the issues of cancer treatment. So when people are diagnosed with cancer, rather than that, sit there and kind of stress about it, or be more proactive within your physical activity and mindset and all the rest of it. So it came from that. So in a small pocket of Greater Manchester, so started in Salford. It's now grown, so it's now covered across the whole of Greater Manchester. There's a team that's led by Jack, with around 11 members of staff, or the practitioners that go out there and take people to our gyms and centres, give them an individualised programme, and really try and support them through that cancer journey. So they are level 3 exercise professionals with specialism in cancer care. So the team, you know, they're an exceptional team, award-winning as well, and rightly so, both from the health sector and from UK Active as well last year. So, and they care passionately about trying to make a difference to the recovery and the survival rates, and just helping people, to those affected by cancer, not just the cancer patients, because it's about families and loved ones as well that are affected by it. So it really is that kind of holistic approach to supporting all of those affected by cancer. Currently, we now, through the success of it, independent evaluation has meant that we now have recurrent funding for the main part of colorectal surgery, or colorectal cancer. What we want to do is something called prehab for all, and we want to be able to move that to all cancer strains, all cancer pathways, to make sure that actually it is prehab for all. So our strong ambition, working with all of the connected partners, the NHS, the ICB, GM Cancer, SLC, and SCL, and GM Active, GM Moving. Our ambition is to move that to 20,000 referrals a year. At the minute, it's about 1,900. So if we can move in that direction, we clearly need to grow that workforce. And we need to do another independent evaluation, because last year we had a lung expansion of that program, but we need to keep adding more and more to it. So the will is there, the ambition is there, and we will, through the process that we're going through at the minute, we will succeed that. So in the next 2 years, I think we'll be referring around 10,000 patients a year. 5-year strategy is to be able to refer around 20,000 a year.
Wow, that's some scaling, isn't it? Yeah. When you consider, the area that you're talking about. And to do that, I suppose behind the scenes, there's a lot of other work that has to take place. I mean, you mentioned just alone the number of staff that you're going to have to scale up, and the number of staff that are involved, not just in the delivery, but I suppose behind the scenes to make it happen. Some really interesting work going on from a kind of staff development and leadership perspective within GM as part of GM Active. Can you tell us a little bit more about that program and how it's delivered, and the ambitions for that as well moving forward?
Yeah, of course. So it's one third of our Pivot to Active Wellbeing project that a lot of people will have heard about through Andy and others. So the Pivot to Active Wellbeing project, the 3 parts, of one of which is workforce development. Breaking that down a little bit further, working through one of our other business partners, which is FutureFit, and working through their Flex platform. We have a 3-part process. One is a digital induction. So in terms of being able to make sure that we're taking everyone of that coalition of 3,500 people with us, they need to know what we're talking about here. So when we're talking about active well-being and health and wellness and well-being, instead of calling ourselves leisure all the time, we need to take people on that journey. There's no point in just those of us sat in ivory towers knowing actually what we're referring to. So it's that digital induction piece is something that we launched last year to make sure that everyone has that exposure to really understand what they're doing, and that everyone has a role to play in this ambition. Part 2 is something that we'll be launching on the 1st of April in terms of our first cohort, is called the Aspiring Managers Programme. So that is very much around those that are maybe shift supervisors, duty managers, etc., those that are more at a site level. What influence and what difference can they make within their site to actually do things differently, connect with the community? What do they need to do differently within their leadership to make sure that we are encouraging people to be physically active, and knowing that we are developing the right programs, and that we're not still stuck in that 1980s leisure sector of build it and they will come, field of dreams type approach. So it's absolutely that we start listening to the community, and not listening to the people that come into our doors already, actually speaking to the non-users, and that's a critical part of it. Part 3 is then something that has been up and running for a couple of years now. It's coming up to 3 years now. So we've had four cohorts, so 80 graduates have gone through the Transformational Leadership Programme. Again, similar to what can they do in a locality basis, what can they do to make a difference? So that program is delivered through John Oxley, who's also one of our board members through his role at Life Leisure. Lots and lots of online webinars, cohort of around 20 learners per time, and really going through that leadership. going through sort of 5 different modules to say, right, what do we need to do differently in our day jobs? How can we approach this in a different manner? A big part of what they have to do at the end, towards the end of that program, is something called their 100-day plan. So actually, how do they use that 100-day plan to think about connecting communities? How do they think about the future of public sector leisure and all of those different documents and strategies that are out there, and make sure that they're relevant within their locality? And so some of the things that we get back from those 100-day plans are really, really quite eye-opening and exciting at times, that actually people out there in the community within our coalition of the workforce have got some really fantastic ideas of how we try and tackle this problem.
Yeah, and I think I was lucky enough to be invited, actually, I think, to the presentation for the last group that went through that program, and some of the actual programs they're developing through their 100-day plan and then delivering, it really shows how they're listening to the community and embedding programs that matter, as you've mentioned, at a local level, listening to those people who aren't catered for, provided for, and providing something that really makes a difference. So, some really exciting work that can then be replicated across GM if it makes a difference within, obviously, the other communities within the Greater Manchester area. There's other work as well, John. I mean, you probably, as you said, mentioned at the very beginning, it's about pulling all the different strands together in all the different work groups. But, you mentioned the research and the work you're doing to evaluate, but also to open up doors and more doors in terms of working with the health sector. And I know you've been working with a local university and a local doctor to try and to do that. Can you tell us a little bit about the academic partnership that you've created or that you're working with? Or
yeah, so again, that's one of the second strands of the whole pivot project. So it's our active academic partnership, working with University of Salford to begin with, and now University of Kiel, just because we've moved the main academic that we're working with, changed universities, and it's common practice, unbeknown to me beforehand, that you move with them rather than but we still have a really strong connection with the University of Salford as well. So it's so they can, both Salford and Kiel have got an awful lot of credit to take with what we've done so far. And it really is just sort of trying to look at what are the barriers, and actually some of the challenge for us has been this different way of going about things, a different approach. I think maybe within leisure we are a bit too stuck into KPIs and actually things being quite black and white, and actually working with the university through their way of doing research and things has been quite eye-opening, in terms of the process that they go through and the learning that we go through. No preconceived ideas of what we absolutely expect to get at the end of this research, because it's more of an open book type thing. So it's exciting, it's challenging, it's scary, but ultimately they some of the small snippets that they're starting to tell us is some of the language that we use at times can be just a massive barrier. If we go into someone and say, I would like you to be part of this program because you need a health intervention, that can be quite off-putting to many. There's some initial learnings that we have to make physical activity and exercise, or people moving more, relevant to them. There is one example of a gentleman that does need some help through some physical difficulties that he has with his legs. His take to that is, I'm not really bothered about me. I'm just looking after my wife. So actually the conversation then changed into, okay, how do we make sure that we are relating to him being a bit more physically active means that he could look after his wife in a better way. So actually just some of that different ways of approaching the challenge, and making physical activity or moving more relevant to that individual has been a key message to that. We are 12 months into that level of research. We've got another 12 months to come. We've been able to find some match funding now as well through Kiel. So now we have, and it's just been secured this week, we now have a PhD student, which will be looking at more of this for the next 3 years with us as well. So we've really been able to sort of use that funding in the best way possible, to make sure that this isn't a short-term fix, and actually those answers are not necessarily the answers, but some of the challenges and barriers that we're trying to uncover just continue to be resolved and to be looked at in a different way. And I think a big part of what the university academics have done for us is go out there and speak to the non-users, which we probably don't have a huge amount of access to as a traditional leisure service department.
Interesting, very interesting, and lots to come on that, I think, over the next, as you said, 12 months to 3 years, to be honest. Just to wrap up, Jon, because I'm conscious of time, what's next for GM Active? What's the immediate future looking like for the next 6 months? And I suppose what's next for Jon Keating? What's the big drive over the next, kind of up throughout 2024?
So from a GM Active perspective, a big one, as I've already mentioned, is that growth of prehab. But equally looking at the lessons learned from prehab in terms of what else can we do to make sure that we are supporting the prevention and management of long-term health conditions. What are the lessons that we can take from the universities and prehab and build it all together to say, actually, this is where we are providing social and economic value in terms of everything that we do. So it's essentially 2023 was very much about the research and the fact finding for Pivot, and that's still ongoing. 2024 and beyond is about putting a lot of that learning into practice. So of which I've just been designing a slide deck ready to take up to Scotland in a couple of weeks to talk about what we've been doing here in Greater Manchester. So and be talking about it in Elevate and various different presentations in the future. So what's next for me? I've just started a executive aspiring leaders program. So what does that mean? Maybe that I end up being the CEO of GM Active in the future once I've completed this course. But Rome wasn't built in a day, but hopefully that's the direction, and we can grow the workforce of GM Active a little bit more, because at the minute it's very much reliant on the volunteers that work within it, and I'm the only employee, and we know that actually the ambition of what we want to achieve is definitely much bigger than our workforce allows us to do at the moment.
Right, great stuff. Well, thank you very much for your time this afternoon, Jon. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, and I look forward to sharing this with our listeners.